This is the Tibor Backcountry, and it's Tibor's only freshwater fly reel. And today, I'm here to review it. So if you've been following the Tibor brand, which has been around for a very long time at this point, you're probably already familiar with the Backcountry. They made a Backcountry way back in the day, and it was a reasonably popular reel. But over the last decade or so, they discontinued it. And that left them with a giant gap in the lineup, which is to say that you could not buy a Tibor for anything less than an 8-weight. And while they're definitely known for their big game saltwater reels, there's certainly a lot of anglers who are fans of Tibor who also fish the fresh. So they decided to reintroduce the Backcountry, and this is the new Backcountry. And before I dive into our standard reel review, there are some interesting features about the Backcountry that I wanted to hit first. And that starts with the packaging. That's right, this is how you will get your new Tibor Backcountry. It comes in a dry bag, which is honestly kind of cool. Instead of having a throwaway piece of cardboard like most reel manufacturers, Tibor gives you a dry bag that you can use for your phone or some flies or anything else that you might want to use. And it's also a bit out of character for the old schoolness of a company like Tibor, but a cool touch nonetheless. Another thing that's interesting about this Backcountry is that it only comes in two colors, this silver and a standard black. And so while I'm super bummed that you can't get this in the standard Tibor gold, some of the other colors I probably care a little bit less about. And to make up for it, Tibor offers this with a wide range of engravings. So you could get a skull and bones or a crab on this instead of that beautiful gold. Overall, jury's still out on whether or not you should do that, but it is an option if you want something that's a little bit more customized than your standard reel. And last but not least, the Backcountry only comes in one size at the moment, and Tibor calls it a 5 to 7 weight, and it's definitely more on the 5 or 6 weight size. I suppose you could probably squeeze a 7 weight on there, but this solidly fits into the freshwater with maybe a tiny bit of saltwater crossover. And with that, let's dive into our 5 factors, starting with the drag. On this Tibor Backcountry, you're gonna get 4 3/4 turns of adjustment, more or less. Because this does not have a hard stop on the top end, you could probably tighten it down even tighter than that, but that was about as tight as I was willing to go and probably as tight as one could reasonably use on the water on any given day. Unfortunately, that's way too many turns for my liking. You're gonna be turning and turning and turning this if you really need to stop a fish. With that said, there is a lot of adjustability, so if you're looking for those micro adjustments, you've got them here. Interestingly, Tibor doesn't talk a lot about the drag here. So in fact, I don't actually know what this is made of, but being a Tibor, I'm guessing it's gonna be a cork drag. When we took this reel apart to measure the spool, you can't really see into the drag. So it definitely looks more like a Signature than it does an Everglades. But the bottom line is, I can't actually tell you with 100% certainty what this drag is made of, but if I were guessing, I would say this is gonna be a standard Tibor cork drag. Another thing that Tibor doesn't talk about on the website is whether or not this drag is sealed, but given that most Tibors are not sealed, I think we can safely assume that this one is also not sealed. And that leaves the Tibor Signature as the only sealed drag if you're looking for a Tibor that's sealed. In terms of drag strength, this is pretty good. If I had to guess, I'd put it in the 4 to 6 pound range. It's definitely a giant improvement over the old Backcountry. When you took apart the old Backcountry, there was only a tiny bit of cork that was used to stop that reel, and it was the major complaint, at least on my end, of that old reel. This reel has fixed that. You get tons of drag power, and definitely as much as you're gonna need for freshwater or light saltwater applications. One final note on the drag before we move on is that it does feel like as you tighten it, the incoming retrieve changes a little bit as well. I don't know if that's because this is a brand new reel and just has a little bit of a break-in period, but even on its loosest setting, the incoming retrieve is a little bit tight, and frankly, so is the drag. So if you turn this all the way down, you're probably still looking at a half a pound to maybe even as much as a pound of drag. So if you're looking to fish really light tippets, this reel might not be the one for you. And now let's talk about the spool. And the spool on this reel is really similar to the Sage Trout that we just reviewed. It's gonna have a max diameter of 3.35 inches, a nice narrow 0.9 inch width, and an arbor size of about 2 inches. And that yields a retrieval rate of about 7 inches per turn, or about 170 turns for that 100-foot fly line. Overall, I'd call that solidly mid-arbor by today's standards, even for a 5-weight. This reel is not a giant reel, and it shows in terms of its performance. When it comes to backing capacity, you can fit about 200 yards of 20-pound Dacron with your 5-weight, which is plenty. It's definitely going to be enough for any freshwater and light saltwater applications. And if you want to up that and go to a 6-weight, you're probably going to be fine, and maybe even a 7-weight. But again, as I mentioned earlier, this was really more of a 5-6 reel. Interestingly, Tibor rates this reel for 150 yards of 65-pound gel spun. And while I'm not sure who would ever use gel spun on a 5-6 reel, it's certainly an option, though I've found those Tibor ratings to be a little bit overstated, and you might want to spool that a little bit lighter. Up next is the weight, and this Tibor Backcountry comes in at 6.5 ounces. And 6.5 ounces is really light for a Tibor, but sort of pretty heavy for a 5-weight. Honestly, I'm not really sure how to think about this reel because it is more of a crossover saltwater reel, and there just aren't a ton of 6-weight saltwater reels out there to compare it to. But if you're looking for a freshwater Tibor, I can tell you this is pretty heavy. I fish a reel that's under 4 ounces, and this is almost twice as heavy. So if you're fishing an ultra lightweight 5-weight rod, this might be too heavy for you. On the other hand, if you're fishing a salty 6 or a 7, this might be okay. In terms of comparisons, the Nautilus X series is going to be quite a bit lighter, but the Hatch 5 Plus, which is just a little bit bigger of a reel, is only a touch lighter. So this feels like it's sort of in the ballpark with some of the competitors, but overall, if you're looking for really lightweight, this isn't it, but it's also not super heavy. This review is brought to you by Trident Travel, which is our new destination travel service where you'll get our expert advice, planning, and guidance at no additional cost. That means no credit card fees, no booking fees, and for a limited time, you'll even earn Trident rewards on your travel bookings. So with every trip you book, you'll be earning valuable points that you can use towards free tackle here at Trident. Recently, we've had some clients go on some absolutely fantastic trips like tarpon fishing in Belize, Atlantic salmon fishing in New Brunswick, and trout fishing in Alaska. So if you're thinking about taking a fly fishing trip, Trident Travel is the way to do it. We've got a ton of great destinations, excellent service, and even more destinations being added every month. Check us out at tridentflyfishing.com/travel. Up next is gonna be the sound, and if there's one major disappointment, in my opinion, on this reel, it's how it sounds. Tibors, generally speaking, sound fantastic. And that is probably my favorite thing about the Everglades and about the Signature Series is that sound. And this one just sounds okay. And well, take a listen. Let me know what you think. While it does have a differentiated incoming and outgoing, it's just way too muted for my taste, and I'm just disappointed that it doesn't sound like an Everglades. And last but not least is the ergonomics, and I think the ergonomics are pretty good here. In terms of the handle, you've got a really great big game handle. This is going to be a very similar handle to what you'll get on an Everglades, and it's great. On the drag knob side, they've bumped this out a little bit. It's reasonably easy to grab. Certainly if you tighten it all the way, it's gonna get pretty tight and hard to adjust. But for most fishing, you're not gonna be doing that, and it's gonna be totally fine. I'd say probably not my absolute favorite drag knob, but totally adequate. If there's one area that is not so good on this backcountry, it's the spool change. And while it is possible to change a spool, and you could do it on the water, it's definitely not the best spool change. So if you're fishing lakes or any other situation where you're gonna have to switch lines on the water and do it often, this reel is probably not the one for you. Or you can just buy a second reel. There's just too many small parts, too many parts that you can lose, and frankly, too many reels that are really easy to switch spools on to recommend switching the spool on this reel on the water. And before we sign off, let's talk about the price. This reel comes in at $595, which makes it the least expensive reel in the Tibor lineup. Unfortunately, some of the more expensive reels do give you a lot more options. Overall, I think this reel is going to be pretty specialized for people who are really interested in fishing a Tibor in those lighter conditions. And frankly, you're probably not going to care about the price. If you're looking at this from a value perspective, you are getting a made in the USA reel backed by a great company who makes a really quality product and has done so for a really, really long time. But $600 for your 5 or 6 weight reel is still a lot. In terms of the competition, this is still cheaper than the Hatch Iconic 5 Plus, but quite a bit more expensive than the Nautilus X. So if you're looking for lightweight, the Nautilus X gives you that at a way cheaper price point. And if you're looking for a little bit better performance and a little bit more modern looking of a reel, you've got the Hatch Iconic, but you're going to pay a little bit more. And that's the Tibor Backcountry. I'm happy that they brought this reel back, though I wish it were a little bit louder. I wish it had that classic Tibor sound. And frankly, I wish it came in a gold color. But overall, if you're a Tibor fanatic and you want a freshwater reel to play with, this is the one. And it'll do some really nice light saltwater duty. So if you got a 6-weight bonefish rod, or you're snooking in the Florida backcountry and you want a 6-weight, this is going to be a great choice. Tell us what you think about this new backcountry, how it compares to the old backcountry, and what your favorite Tibor reel is by leaving us a comment in the box below. And don't forget, if you've got questions, we've got answers. Give us a call at 888-413-5211 or email us 24/7 at support@tridentflyfishing.com. And don't forget, we've got a lot of great reel reviews coming right up, so subscribe to our channel. It really helps us out. I'm Ben. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.